Okay, welcome to our first project, which is the initials project. We're going to open up Illustrator and then create a new document. We're going to get a letter document over here. I want that particular format because that will be perfect for printing these out to our printer. If you come over here, you can look at your parameters for this document in various forms, points, picas, inches is kind of the best thing for me to use right now. And then orientation, right now I have portraiture selected, portrait orientation, but you could select landscape orientation. And you can set up various other advanced options for printing, particularly for color mode, but we're not going to do that right now. We're just going to kind of set this file up. Now, what I want to be able to do, I would like to be able to set up guides that would allow me to break this 8.5 by 11 into 4 equal quadrants. And then there'll be a little bit of a trim area down here, and we'll mark that in a second. So first thing I want to do, just a little bit of a refresher for the general user interface of Adobe Illustrator. So you have the pull-down menus that allow you to do certain things in Illustrator, and then you also have the toolbar over here, and the toolbar allows you to select things like text, shapes, and then alter those shapes. The big popular thing over here, of course, would be the pen tool that allows you to trace things and make irregular shapes. Anyhow, we'll be using these tools from the menu bar as we go along, so not to get too in depth there. And then, of course, the panels over here. The panels over here allow you to alter various things that are on the screen. These panels can be closed, opened, and then these are primary panels for the things that you're using at a particular point in time. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to set up guides. I want to make sure that I'm showing guides, and indeed I am showing them. I just don't have anything there yet. I'm going to go to rulers, going to show rulers because I want to set my guides up. So you can see now I'm moving a guide. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm going to set this guide to 4 1/4. Okay, because of the fact that I want the 4 equal quadrants, I know that 4 1/4 is half of 8.5. I'm going to do the same thing here, 4 1/4, and then I'm going to come down to 8.5 here. Okay, and now I have my 4 quadrants, and that's where I'm going to be working. This area down here, these 2 quadrants, this kind of row that we have down here, this will just be trimmed on the paper cutter when we're all finished with this little exercise. Now, what we want to do is we want to focus on what you can do with letter forms and typefaces. So very simply, you're going to be using the type tool, and you're going to be working with your initials. My initials would be C and L. And so right now I've got the C and the C here. I'm going to just expand that by holding the corner of the shape. If we go ahead and pull out the character panel over here, I could have also expanded that just by inputting something directly into the size there. But this is fine. So the other thing I want to be able to do is take a look at the different type choices that are available to me. So you can see just by all of these various typefaces that they all look fairly different. Baskerville, for example, if I were to select that, this is a serif font, which means that it has little feet on it. Anyhow, let's look at a font that is not a serif font. Arial, for example, is a sans serif font, and so what that means is that there's no little feet, you would call them. Okay, so let's look at a couple of others. Bodoni is a gorgeous font. You see the little feet. Let's come over here, and Andale Mano, for example, no little feet. Now, each of these fonts, I'm hoping that you're starting to see, these fonts all have what you would kind of call personalities, right? So if you think about font personalities, you can think about fonts as being different forms of kind of families. I'm a really big fan of certain fonts. I really love Bodoni as a font. I think it's a really beautiful font. Caslon is also a wonderful font. We'll go ahead and size this. Now, what I want to start looking at right now is just kind of the nature, I would say, of the font itself. And if I start thinking about this font as just a form, like if I kind of look at like the positive and the negative space of this font, I can start thinking of it not as a letter, but as just shape and space with negative and positive space. Now I'm going to take my second initial, which is L for leather. I'm going to move that somewhere in here, and again, I'm just going to be looking at ways to think about alignment. How do I want to align these two things? And what I'm trying to drive towards is the idea that I don't want to see these necessarily as letters. I want to see them more as shapes and designs unto themselves. Okay? And I'm going to just play with black and white for right now. Now, what would happen if I were to take the C, right? And how about I just rotate the C 90 degrees? Okay, so there's an easier way for me to do that rotate. Command Z takes me back to where I was. I can rotate, for example, by 90 degrees, and that kind of saves me a little bit of time. So I don't want to move that. I want to move this one. And I want to keep everything, in this particular case, I want to keep everything on the inside of my rectangle. So you see this little part here that's going over. I really want to keep everything in if I can. So let's get that guy aligned right there. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, so now I can see that this is kind of interesting. I'm going to just play with this a little bit and see what happens. Like if I make this actually larger and then keep it aligned to the left-hand side, what happens? That's kind of not as interesting to me because I have more kind of balance of light to dark spaces within the design. I'm a little, well, I don't know. I kind of look at this and I feel like that's a little bit tight. And so how about I just take this and I just size it down a tiny little bit, and then that gives me a little bit more open space in here, kind of just more kind of visual balance. If I were to think about just dividing this darn thing into halves and kind of looking at it from a grid standpoint, I could even do that. So 4 1/4 will give me 2 and a little bit over 2. Okay, and so I could start to look at each of these grid, you know, kind of like what's happening inside each of these grid areas. Is there something interesting happening in each of them? And I can see right now that if I were just to look at like this square, this is kind of pleasing to me. Yeah, I'm just I think that that looks pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, I'm going to use Command C and Command V to make a copy of my L. This time I'm going to move the L over here to the other grid. But this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with these letter forms in such a way that I'm just going to move them and then cut them out of the screen, so to speak. So this time what I want to look at is just, again, this square area over here that we're working with, but I want to take some part of the letter and take it off and out of the square to give myself yet a secondary way to look at these letter forms. This is a little bit more complicated because I have to think about what's going to happen, you know, after I do the cut, right? So I'm going to take the L and kind of play with scale here. And I'm going to just make the L a slightly bigger than everything else. Okay. And then I'm going to, because I just kind of want to see what this looks like, I'm going to take a couple of white squares. And I'm just going to take those to the edge. solely for the purpose of being able to look at this area kind of with almost like with a mask on. This is not proper masking, but at least it gives you some idea. So I've been working with this really nice serif font, Bodoni or Big Caslin, and I'm going to change that font now to sans serif, which means no serif. And I'm going to come down to Helvetica Neue because I really, really love, I love Helvetica, the font Helvetica. I think it's beautifully, beautifully designed font. And now this time, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change, again, size here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do what's called create. I'm going to expand the object, and that will give me access to, for the font, that will give me access to to the anchor points, the vector anchor points on either side. And now I can take those anchor points and I can move those any way that I want. I can tilt them and do something like that, which I think is kind of interesting. And then let's take our C now and let's move our C back in. I'm going to right click, come down here to transform. We're going to rotate the transform 90 degrees again. We just keep on doing that, huh? Let's do a transform again. And this time, let's just rotate again. And let's go let's go like 180 degrees. Okay, that gets me back to where I was. And again, I want to work within the space that's here. And I'm going to work a little bit with the difference of scale, right? So I'm going to create kind of a little bit of almost like a story, you know, with these two fonts. I'm going to take the smaller font and using scale, I'm going to even take the smaller. And I'm going to use scale to show that there's, you know, a big powerful one and a little tiny one. And so, you know, is this story one of, you know, David and Goliath, or is it more mother and child? Well, like, what is the scale tell us about the overall design? So I think I'm going to keep that. I actually kind of like that. I'm going to take the C now. I'm going to replicate the C over here. This is my box. And I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to generate a whole bunch of C's. And I'll just, you know, make several. I've got 3. Oops. You see how I keep on clicking things that I can't get it. It's locked. I'll take these 3 C's, cut and paste those, and now I'm copying 3 at a time. I'm going to take this C over here, move it out, this C here, move it. Now I'm going to grab all 3 C's, minus the guideline, and I'm going to align them. Come over here to the Align panel, align them that way, and then do a horizontal distribute from the center. Now I'm going to grab all of these again. I'm going to do minus the guide. I don't want to actually be changing the guides, so I'm going to come over here to guides, and I'm going to lock those guides so that they can't change. I'm going to come over here to the expand again, which it used to be called something like, and what I'm going to do is just expand out, okay? And then I'm going to take all of these little guys and I'm going to just start doing crazy things with them, okay? And I'm going to just kind of work on the, whoops, I'm going to zoom this in a little bit so that I can see a little bit more of what's happening. And I just really like this. And so I'm going to take this, I'm going to zoom this in even more, and I'm going to have this line of C's just kind of like fighting and angsty with each other, okay? Just like they're siblings that just can't get along, and they're like poking each other and being obnoxious. This one's actually touching that one, so I'm sure that's going to get a timeout from somebody. I'm going to take this one. If I feel like that's too much, I can you know, kind of curve that up, like this one's touching that one. But if I look at it, you can see that there's more of a curve. you know, so that is just kind of a different approach. Let's take this inner line here and let's just do something weird like that and kind of break it apart. And then what I want to do is I want to take that and then I'm going to just curve that up a little bit. Okay, so we've got all kinds of weird stuff happening here, which I'm a fan of. Love weird stuff. I'm going to pull, whoops. I'm going to pull this one out, select that one. And that one, it's like it's shooting a cannon or it's sticking its tongue out or something weird. Let's actually take that and yeah, okay. And then we'll take this last one, and I think what I'm going to do with this last one is I'm going to convert this guy back to a shape, okay? Because what I want to do with it now is I want to just turn it around. So I'm going to transform it, and we will, we're going to reflect it, and we want to reflect it on the vertical, okay? And so we're going to have this one just kind of like fighting back. But what I'm going to do is kind of like just take this one out of it. I'm going to rotate this one just a little bit like it's been hit or something. And then we're going to put a little effect on there. I don't know what it'll be, but let's kind of see. Maybe we'll like put a little, where's that spatter? Okay. And let's just put a little bit of a radius on it. Smoothness is going to make it smooth. I don't actually want to make it smooth. I just kind of want to make it like that. And so now I've put an effect on that text, which I kind of like. Now, what happens if I go ahead and I expand the appearance of that thing? That means, again, that I can come in and okay, that's pretty cool. So anyhow, I kind of like this approach. I like what's going on here. I like the spacing. I like the interplay between the black and white. I think that's really fun. Now, what I'm going to do is take all of these. I'm going to take them, and now I'm going to make them a group. So when I select one, I'm kind of like selecting all of them. And then we're going to take the group down here. I can rotate the whole group if I want. And that's kind of fun. However, I actually think I'm going to undo that because I think that it works better reading straight through. All right, when I print this, you're going to see, you know, that I have 4 panels. And the purpose of this is to get you thinking about font faces, fonts, the fact that somebody designs this type. That's the most important thing. Letter forms just don't happen. A designer sits and draws them out and thinks about them and thinks about the space, how they're going to be when they're put together. And so this exercise, I think, gives you a really great little opportunity to kind of just spend some time thinking about, you know, typefaces as something that somebody has designed and kind of playing with the negative and the positive of those spaces. Thank you.